Welcome. Good to have you with me and others who are joining as well. So welcome. So you've probably already spotted the chat. You've obviously spotted the chat as well. And I'm just going to mention a few minutes about the Q&A button along the bottom as well that you hopefully will notice in a few seconds. So what we're going to look at this morning is going to look at the whole thing of how do I build trust so my child will share, and really so I'm just going to see the notice. Can you hear me? Just give me a thumbs up that it's Ivan. Am I saying that right, Ivan? Okay, yeah. Yeah, I think people are muted, but you can message me there. So you're obviously hearing me. Good. Okay, so good to have a familiar face on board, and welcome everybody else as well. And I know some people will be watching afterwards, can't join us right now, but it's great when there are actual people on board as well, because it just sort of makes it come alive. So thank you for those who are here now or might be joining us in a few minutes. So I'm going to go into my keynote and share with you the screen, which means you'll be seeing a little small picture of me at the top, and I can sort of see messages coming in, so that I'll be able to pop back in and see how comments are coming in and what we're sharing together. So let me just bring up my other main screen, and you hopefully have now got that to be able to see how to build trust so your child will share. So welcome, whether you're watching it live now or coming back to it later. And yeah, I'm Val Mullally from Co-Ember Parenting. If you're not already connected with me on social media, I do use YouTube. I'm sort of getting into Instagram as well. And I want to introduce you to a concept I've come up with today that can help us think about how to build the trust, and that is a sort of make-believe word of trustometer. And so the trustometer is a concept I'll share with you today. It's not a physical thing, it's just a concept I'll share. And so just a little bit of housekeeping. If you've got other things open on your internet, you might want to close them down so that it doesn't sort of drain your connection if your connection's not as good as you'd like. And also, I really invite you to give your time and attention to this. I know it's easy to sort of quickly check on something else, but the more you can just give yourself this time, and I'll try and keep moving promptly and move through the material for you, the more you're going to gain from this. And then just to say, there is a Q&A box at the bottom as well as a chat box. Now, it's not going to be something that I think is a big concern today, but if you want to, that's a place to put a question where questions are separated from the general chat. So let's jump into our work today. Oh, I've already introduced myself, so we don't need that one. What we're going to look at particularly is why trust matters, how we can increase trust, and introduce you, as I say, to this concept of a trustometer. And yet, you know, we all wish that life with parenting was just like a nice, smooth, straight road, but we all know that it is often not so easy. We have our ups and downs, and sometimes it can feel as though the road's not straight at all. And so how do we handle the challenging times is hugely important. And so I'm going to share with you this idea of a trustometer, a concept of, you know, sometimes it's as though the tank is empty or full. And obviously the idea is that if we've got a full tank, there's going to naturally and easily be trust and support and sharing in the family. But the thing is, I think we need to think it's not just like a fuel tank where there's a steady up, well, a fill up and then a slow going down. I think in a sense, it's more like the rev counter, you know, that sometimes a gear change happens and that dial can flip and move to a different place in a comparatively short time. And how do we keep that steady sense of trust? So why does this matter? Well, it matters right from the very earliest years, I think, because if we can create that sense of trust when our children are young, it's going to set the platform for them to share and be present with us when they're older, and say what's challenging them, what is maybe of concern to them. So as we look at this, I'm thinking, you know, I look at England, for instance, right now. There's a huge amount of knife crime. It must be a great worry for parents. Would your child feel free to come and share with you about, you know, is there a problem with somebody being bullying or even violent at school, or the worry of violence? Or will they share with you their concerns, whether the issues are around, you know, do I drink, do I do this, whatever? How do we create that trust for our children to share, that they know home is their safe space? And here's a key thing that I want to share, and it's coming from new findings in neuroscience and discussed in this lovely book by Judith Glaser, Conversational Intelligence. And she brings up the whole concept of we need to recognize trust and distrust are hugely important. But the part of it that neuroscience brings up is what I'm going to discuss with you in seconds. Before I get to do that, whether you're live with me now or whether you're watching later, I'm going to invite you for a few secs to imagine a scenario. We'll just do a little trust experiment. Now, I just want to say, if you've had a very traumatic experience, a situation in your past, you might just want to mute the sound for a few secs, and it'll only be a few minutes. Okay, if you're on board with me and you're right to do this, I'm going to invite you to think for a moment and imagine yourself in a strange situation, maybe in a strange city, you're walking down somewhere you don't know, and this person comes towards you. There's something about their way of walking that they're just coming directly into your body space. Maybe the head's down, maybe a hoodie's over, the hands in the pocket, and something is saying to you, is this person okay? And somehow they're coming nearer and nearer to you. And as you imagine that, just notice how that feels in your body. Okay, and let that go and just come back to me if you did clock out for a minute there. And I'm going to just invite you to notice how you felt at that time. Notice feelings of maybe tension in your body. Did you feel like freezing still or running? Did you feel that sense of tightness in your throat, or your whole body maybe tensing? Because the thing is, we have some sort of body reaction in any situation. So now, just for a few secs, let's do a second scenario. Put yourself back in that same setting you imagined, and now you see someone coming towards you. And as they come closer, you see, this is somebody I know. This is somebody I care a lot about. And as that person sees you, their face lights up. There's a great big smile, and they rush towards you with their arms out. And as you move towards them, just notice how your body feels now. Even though we're just imagining this, notice the difference in your body. Notice that there's a sense of probably relaxation, of warmth. It's a very different experience when we're like that. Okay, so the thing is, as we look at that, here's what Judith Glaser is saying that is so important, I think. We experience trust in a different part of our brain to where we experience distrust. So if we were to look at a picture of the brain, not a real one, obviously, this is just a diagram from my Behave What to Do When Your Child Won't book. And if we imagined that thing, and those of you who've worked with me know that sort of at the deep base of the brain here is where the reptilian brain is situated, where we are triggered and want to go into that fight or flight or freeze mode when something feels like that first scenario, when it feels not safe. And the thing is, when something feels not safe, distrust gets, sorry, that is trust there. Trust is triggered in the front cortex area here, your thinking, reasoning part of the brain, whereas distrust is triggered where I've put that red mark coming up now. Distrust is figured in the reptilian area of the brain, the area where we do feel the sense of, I've got to escape or I've got to fight back. So this is really actually key. The more I've thought about this, the more this simple thought is just making me think, oh, wow. So here's the thing. This front cortex area, the neocortex, this is where our rational reflective thought process happen, where we have awarenesses of our possibilities, our choices, our consequences we have. And this is also the where we have the ability to choose how to respond. So the thing is, if your child is in a sense of trust, this part of the brain is engaged. Whereas if they're in distrust, it's as though that thinking, reasoning part of the brain actually gets flooded out. And what happens then is we go into the reactive brain, what I talk about in my boot camp about the crocodile tango, where, you know, your child's brain gets reactive, yours is reactive, and you get into this snappy, snarly dance together. Okay, so in a sense, I've already started mentioning why this is important. It's important as a saying because, you know, your child's brain, and in a sense your brain as well, if you're in that sense of trust or distrust, when you're in that sense of trust, that is when you're going to be able to think through what is needed and what's really going on here. This is where we'll be able to hold another person's perspective in mind. Whereas if we're in that distrust place, we're just going to have a black, white, right or wrong, this is it, and often a sort of fight or flight reaction. And the thing is, I think it's also really helpful to recognize that trust is not a given. Trust is not a constant. So as I said, it's like that dial when you change gear, you know, the rev counter, that it can fluctuate and change within a few seconds almost. So let's think about that then. Are we creating trust when our children most need us? The times when they most need to share something, when they may be feeling worried or upset, might be the time that they actually are rather reactive in their behavior. And so if we trigger them, they're just going to go into the distrust part of the brain instead of the trust. So what it made me think about is, so how do we behave as parents that can either support that trust or trigger our children's brains into distrust? I'm going to come out of the screen for a moment. And also just to say, if you'd like to, I see I've got other people on board with me now, which is great. Sorry, when I'm on the screen here, I can't actually, when I'm showing you the PowerPoint, I can't actually see the main screen. Now you've got me back, so now I can see if there's any comments on that in. So if you, I just want to invite you, if you had any sort of, as we did that recording and you had any thoughts, if you wanted to sort of type in, or any feelings of what you were aware of was with the trust distrust, feel free to type that in. But also I wanted to just come back in to share with you some of my thoughts around, you know, how do we behave as parents that triggers either the distrust. Well, let's focus on the distrust first of all, because what I realized, as I said, it can trigger very easily, and you know, there's so many little things that do trigger it. So the sort of things that trigger are around, for example, you know, your child says something's very the raised eyebrow, or, you know, the drawing back and the folding arms. Whoops, I'm too low, you can't see the folded arms, the folded arms. But also things like, you know, your child says something and, you know, what are all the little messages like that? Or the time a child is trying to share something and we interrupt, you know, we come in with the, well, what you should do. You know, the moment we've done something like that, we've actually broken that sense of trust, and the distrust part of the brain can easily get triggered. And so I think when we have an awareness of this, we can be more conscious of the trustometer. Has that gauge gone down towards empty? What do I need to keep it looking a happy gauge? And obviously, you know, when we have a little hiccup, as every family does, we can repair that, and that is part of building the trust, that every family will have hiccups and we can repair that. But But the thing is, how do we build the trust that is going to create the environment for us as a family to thrive, and noticing our little everyday interactions. And so I'm not noticing any comments come up, so I'm going to go back into the screen again and just share with you where we're at. Yeah, just got to get myself back in there. There we are. So yeah, how do we behave? And particularly, oh, have I pushed the play? Sorry, there we are. Sorry. Okay. How do we behave? And that is going to either trigger our child's reactive brain, but also, in a sense, I think when we interact in a way that's withdrawing or going into fight mode, we trigger our own reactive brain. It's like we feed the crocodile, and the more live and active he gets. So how do we calm our own crocodile brain? Because the thing is, if the conversation space feels conflictual, our children won't step into it. Think about that. If the conversation space feels conflictual, our children won't step into it. You know, you're going to get the reply of something like, oh, well, it doesn't matter, or, you know, oh, no big deal, or whatever it is. You're going to sense the disconnect when maybe you were just on the edge of hearing what was really going on for them and being able to support them in that. So yeah, welcome to the trustometer. And so how can you check your trustometer gauge? How can you check that you're fueling the relationship, the trust relationship between you and your child? I think a really key part is to notice your own emotions, because times when we're feeling frustrated or angry, anxious or stressed, we're very likely to go into that reptilian brain reactive mode. And then it's going to come out in, you know, us jumping into quickly into the conversation instead of listening, us coming up with the solutions instead of listening to what they're experiencing. And very often then what happens is we trigger the fight or the flight mode, that is, say the child is either gonna, don't tell me what to do, or whatever, and back off from you. And so at the same time, we can look at this and say, well, okay, there's also the middle ground. You know, we could be down on the side with the, you know, miserable little face there where trust is broken, or we can be where the tank is full. But also there's the sort of middle ground where, you know, the tank's sort of somewhere hovering there, where there's a willingness to try. There's an ambivalence. Can I share? Not. And a seeking of common ground. And this is an important one to recognize. How do we build that sense of, I think, of a bridge between our child and ourselves? Okay, so distrust. If you think about it, when you're in a place of distrust, how do you feel? And very often we notice our own feelings around that. As I say, it might be frustration or anger or anxiety. Because sometimes we feel distrustful, maybe not so much of the child, but of the situation in life that we're worried about and feeling anxious. But the thing is, it can then get read by your child as distrust of them. So how will your child feel? Remember that if there's a sense of you trigger their distrust, they're going to go to that reactive part of the brain. And maybe even for yourself, you might think back and remember a time in your own childhood, perhaps, when you remember. I certainly can remember, strangely, the incident that comes to my mind is a time when I grew up in Africa, and one night we went out in a vehicle, a sort of open Land Rover Jeep type vehicle with big spotlights on, so on, and looking for wild pigs, which cause a lot of harm to the crops. And we were looking and looking, trying to find, and just as we'd driven past, I glimpsed one behind, and I said, there, I've just seen one. And the adult said, oh, yeah. Well, all these years later, I know I saw a wild pig that night. But there was that sense of distrust from the parent. It wasn't actually my own parents, but the adult, that said, yeah, you're just making it up. You know, they're just, oh, yeah. And that sense of, don't you believe me, can actually stay with one amazingly all these years later. So I don't want us to get bogged down in the distrust. I'm wanting to just think more about, well, how do we build the trust and what happens when the trust tank is full? The thing is, if the trust tank is full, your child can partner with you. They can see new possibilities. And with you, they can co-create solutions and create empathy. And also, it develops our child's confidence and their competence, their ability to do with things. You know, if they've got a difficult situation and they've had a chance to talk through and think about what matters to them, what could the options be, and so on, they're going to feel more confident and competent to handle the situation, which in a sense builds their inner trust and builds their trust with you, but also builds your trust with them that they can handle these situations. So having a full trust tank is actually like an upward spiral leading to more trust. So how do we go about building the trust? As I said, if you think about what doesn't work, like our body language that isn't helpful, we need to think about having open body language that says, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm paying attention, I want to hear your story. And just, we do that if we consciously think this matters right now, and we just think about, how do I build a bridge? If we just focus on building a bridge, we'll find ourselves naturally opening our body language to hear our child's experience. Because the thing is, we want to listen to connect and understand. If we keep that upmost in our mind, how do I listen to connect and understand? Not listen to correct, listen to connect. And what your child needs is your empathy, your connection, and your support to build trust. So, the thing is, every family sometimes is going to hit a sense of crisis. And a thought that I love is that apparently the Japanese use the same word for crisis as they do for opportunity. And isn't that a lovely thought, that something that can feel like a crisis at the time is actually an opportunity? You know, it's an opportunity to build the strong bridge of trust between yourself and your child. It's an opportunity to help your child to look at some of the challenges, maybe look at something that didn't turn out okay and see what could we do differently, and so on. And if we just take the mindset of seeing it as an opportunity, it'll help to move us from going into a reactive place to rather staying in our thinking, reasoning, whole brains, where we can connect at heart level and at head level. And so I'm thinking that you're probably thinking, okay, but how do I do this? I'm going to ask you that I take just a few moments to share with you about my upcoming boot camp. And then I'm going to give you a chance to ask questions if you've got any other questions about what we've talked about today around the whole around the whole thing of building trust. So why you showed up today? I imagine you're concerned about what challenges your child might face, or maybe is already facing. I'm sure that what you don't want is for your child to keep their anxiety bottled up, or for your child to feel alone when the world is rough out there. You don't want your child seeking answers from people who might lead astray, because the thing is, our children's brains will pick up those distrust signals anytime our anxiety or our anger take over. So what can a parent do? Because what you do want, I'm imagining, is to know how to set a strong foundation so your child can trust you to be there for them when they need you the most. So when it comes to building trust in the home, there's two ways you might handle this. Option one will be continue as you are and hope everything will be okay. And option two is to discover 9 proven steps to build trust. And so you might be saying, okay, how? And I'm saying, I'm inviting you to join me on a 5-week boot camp, which starts this coming Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. and will run for 5 evenings from there, for calmer, happier parenting. What this means is you can create the trust in your home for your child to develop the resilience and the confidence to handle the challenging issues that arise. So I also am going to give you a bonus discount for this. I'm giving you €20 off, and also a big bonus at the end of every session. There's an Ask Val session, so you have a chance to come into the discussion and us share and me give you sort of further insights around the particular issues that, okay, how does this make sense in my practical situation? And if you're not happy after you've done the first week, just let me know and I guarantee a full money back refund. My course is getting 5-star reviews from every person who has put up a review. It has been a 5-star review. My colleague Patricia Martin from America, who has worked with me on a number of times, here's her comment on what she had to say when she saw that I was starting this course, which, by the way, I've run a few times, and I'm very excited about the feedback I'm getting from this course generally. And so the whole program is up on the link, which I will send you afterwards, and you'll find that you'll find the reviews from people at the top. But if you go down the website page a little, you'll see the full curriculum outline. And it's going to, over the 5 weeks, give you practical tools, tips, but actual steps of how to really create a relationship where I, as parents, stay calm and connected on the inside, which means I can stay calm and connected on the outside. I'm not saying you're going to be perfect all the time, but I do believe we can really move to a place where yelling is something that doesn't happen in our home anymore. And so thank you for listening. And also, if you want to know more, my email, I haven't got my email address there, but it's val@coemba.com, val@coemba.com. So please do contact me if you'd like any further information around that. So let's go, let me turn back from that side, leave it there for a minute, and I'm going to come back into the main screen again. And where are you? There you are. Okay, great. So I'm wondering if you have any questions. Aha, I see more people have come on board while I've been talking, which is great. You're very welcome. And I'm inviting you, if you have any questions around this, how do I build trust in the home? What are the questions that are coming up for you? How do I build, whether your children, and I didn't think to ask ahead of time whether your children are in the teens or if they are younger, because as I say, I think this parenting work is helpful for whatever age your children are, because the thing is, it's about how we are on the inside that counts. So I'm going to invite you, those of you who've come on later, you will see that there's either a Q&A box or in fact, I think if you haven't yet, I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A box. I'm just going to check. No, there aren't any. So I'm looking at the chat right now. I think just feel free to pop, if you have got a question or a comment, feel free to pop it into the chat box there. And I'll just share with one question that did already come up that I thought was okay. So even so even interested in joining the course. That's great, and look forward to. It's probably just say this one is probably the last one I'll run this side of the summer, because I find, once the weather warms up, parents don't tend to be thinking so much around doing courses till the autumn again, but I will start again early autumn. But this is your last chance, I would imagine, this side of the summer. So if you want to know more about it, feel free to contact me. But let me just come back to thanks, Evan. Let me just come back to one of the questions that came up, and that is, so when I have that sense of it's boiling, I feel like I'm reaching boiling point. What do I do then? And the thing is, we need to recognize that when we get wound up, and sometimes we're not wound up because of the kids, maybe we're wound up because we've had a tough day at work or something else that's on our minds that's bugging us. But when we get wound up, it's like the reptilian part of the brain is getting more and more fired up. and more easily we will jump in. And when we have that sense of boiling, it's interesting that we say boiling, because actually, if you think about it, what's happening is with the reptilian brain, that part of our brain has been a key part of our brain for thousands, if not millions of years. It's the part of the brain that triggers, that keeps us safe in an emergency. It's not bad, it's not wrong, it's actually essential. Because if you were, imagine yourself being a cave person long ago, and you're coming out your cave, and out past you walk, say, some big saber-toothed tiger or something. Did they exist when people were here? I can't remember. But some great big creature, and your brain immediately has got to keep you safe. Now, if you had to take it to your frontal cortex to think, this is a tiger, what shall I do about this? You'd already be tiger supper. So what happens is, in any emergency situation, the reptilian brain kicks in, and the reptilian brain is just putting you into action straight away. So you might go into fight, grab my spear and try and get the thing before it gets me, or you might go into flight and run back into the depths of the cave or up the nearest tree or whatever to try and escape. Or you might go into freeze, and freeze is actually, maybe if I keep dead still, you'll pass by and you won't notice me. So that reactive brain is actually key to our survival as a species. But the thing is, that part of the brain which actually triggers first and gets the message before this, so in other words, distrust will trigger before trust. That part of the brain is going to then come on board sooner, flood out this part of the thinking if it senses it's an emergency, and put you into that reactive mode, unless we're noticing the change in our bodies and pulling back from it. Because the thing is, the reptilian brain can't figure out, well, this is just my toddler or teenager having a tantrum or an upset or whatever. This is not a tiger that's going to eat me up. The reptilian brain just senses danger and reacts to that. Whereas if we're on a whole brain mode, then the whole brain is thinking, hang on, this is just my child. This behavior, it's in some ways a cry for help. What's needed here? So we want to keep ourselves in a whole brain engaged mode, which is what this boot camp is all about. So what I'm saying is, if we can recognize those feelings of angst building up in us, we can pull back from that and say, hang on, because we'll sense it in our bodies. If you, anytime you're angry or anxious, you're getting that sensation in your body. So, and boiling is an interesting word, because actually it feels as though we're heating up, because our body is actually pulling on energy to be able to go into action to fight. Okay. Or interestingly, when we're very anxious, we might feel very cold. We talk about freezing. Isn't that interesting? Fight, boiling, or freezing, really cold. We move out of the normal zone. And so if we recognize that, we can consciously pull back before we flip the lid. And we need to realize we're the parent in the relationship. We're the ones who've got to do differently. I really do know that it's fully possible to totally give up yelling and be the sort of parent who can build trust. I didn't do it perfectly myself. I know I didn't. I wish I'd known when my kids were young what I know now. I'm very thankful they've turned out fine. But I do know of families that I've seen and observed where they've taken the principle of gentle discipline, I suppose is the word I'd use, gentle discipline, mindful parenting, and take that approach in what they're doing and keep the connection. Think, I'm the parent, I need to keep in whole brain mode. And when I'm needing to when I feel like I'm going to lose the cool, what do? Get out and take a walk or do something different. Anyway, much more about that on the course, but a few thoughts there around what to do when you feel like it's going to bubble over. Don't go into blaming the kids. Don't go into giving out. Rather think, hang on, what's going on inside me? How do I calm myself down? So I'm going to invite you. I see time has moved on, and I'm not seeing any other questions pop up. What I'm going to invite you is, if there is something that you have taken from this morning that you have found helpful, I'm going to invite you to just please pop that onto the, just write a little note. One thing I'm taking with me from this webinar today, and if you're willing to share any thought on something that struck you in this webinar, it's always good. For those who came in later, there is a chat box. You'll see the little the little chat sign there, and that will open a little column where you can type in. And so, yeah, I'm getting feedback to listen to connect, not listen to correct. You know, I've never actually worded it like that before. It was the first time I've ever worded it like that. I was looking at the words on the screen and suddenly realized that the word connect and correct was so similar. So somehow that got triggered for me this morning too. So thank you for that feedback. And yeah, so I'm not seeing any other comments. I'm just going to pop back into the screen and remind you that I will send you on details about that. And just to say to you, or if anyone's listening afterwards, I'll post the link with wherever I share it on social media. But just to, oh, where have I gone to? I think I've got, oh, sorry, you should be getting that screen. I just wanted to open up to the end screen there for you. Yeah, just to remind you where you can connect with me, and to thank you very much for being with me. And so this is Val Mullally, and do feel free, as I say, my email, val@coemba.com. Do feel free to get in touch if you've got questions, if you want to know more about this, or of course through the social media. So thank you, and I hope this will be helpful for you. And yeah, I think that just one thought that came through there: listen to connect rather than listen to correct. That alone is going to be a big trust builder. So have a great day. Good to be with you all. Bye for now.